greetings. Good evening. Today we're going to be going over all of the bones on the skull and also all of the structures or bony landmarks of the skull. First, we're going to go over the sutures though that are found on the cranium of the skull, which is this region right here. Now notice the sutures are these areas here where the bones have come together. Okay, so this area here, this is the suture. This is known as the coronal suture. This one is known as the sagittal suture. This one over here is known as the lambdoid suture. And the one laterally, this one here is the squamous suture, and it's referred to as squamous because this is the thinnest area of the skull. Squamous refers to a fish scale because fish scales are very, very thin, so hence squamous suture. Now notice that this one is on the left side, so you would always refer to this as the left squamous suture. That is, this left squamous suture. And now if we come to the other side, this would be the right squamous suture that you can see throughout here. Something that's kind of cool to notice is the interdigitation that forms here between these two bones here. This is the left parietal bone and this is the right parietal bone. So there's this interdigitation, and that allows for this structure to be very, very strong. Remember that the function here is to protect the brain. Another factor that is kind of important for us to mention real quick here is that this is the area, this is one of the areas where you would have fontanelles forming here. You also would have some fontanelles form on the sides here, but the one that's very, very noticeable that we are all aware of, known as soft spots in babies, it would be this area here. So, you know, keep in mind that there's going to be a fontanelle here. Now, let me go over some of the major bones, okay? Over here, this would be the right parietal bone. This would be the left parietal bone. The one posteriorly, this would be the occipital bone. Keep in mind, if I take the skull and I turn it over, I would have this scenario here. This area would also be the occipital bone. All of this area, actually, all of this area is the occipital bone, okay? So don't get confused by that. Now, if we come to the lateral aspect of the skull, we have the left temporal bone. This right here would be our zygomatic bone. Here, this is our mandible. And right here, we would have the left maxilla. The maxilla is actually divided. It has a little gap here. So this would be your left maxilla, and this would be your right maxilla, or right and left maxillary bones. Here you would have the nasal bones. We have the right and the left nasal bones. This would be here, the easiest bone to remember of all time, this would be the frontal bone. Let's see, have I forgotten any bones, any major bones? I think we're cool for now. This right here are the orbits. So the orbits are the regions where our actual, our eyeballs reside. Now, within the occipital bone, we have some very interesting structures here that I'm going to mention. This structure right here is very, very large, this one here. So that is actually the foramen magnum. Foramen means hole, so that's a large hole. And an organ that actually travels through here would be the spinal cord. So keep that in mind. Okay, very important organ, I think, right? Now, the other structure or bony landmark that we should be aware of are these very smooth regions here, very smooth. So condyle pertains to smooth round surface. That's what that word means. Smooth round surface, condyle. So we have two condyles, this one here and this one here. So these are occipital condyles, and the occipital condyles actually will interact with the facets, with the superior articular facets on the bone known as the atlas. Now, some unique landmarks, bony landmarks or structures on the skull are the ones found in the temporal bones. And if we get a little bit closer, we'll notice that there's a depression here. This is actually a canal, and meatus pertains to, it actually means canal. So this is our external acoustic meatus. All right, it's a very, very cool term for that one. So let me stick something that's purple here so you can see it more clearly. So I stick that in there. Whoops. If I stick this in here, you can see the external acoustic meatus. Okay. Now, a joint that is found, the only joint of the skull would be this joint here. This is the temporomandibular joint. And you've heard of individuals having issues with what is something called as the TMJ, where they have a lot of pain. So notice the movement that I can create here. So when you're chewing something, this is hard to do with one hand, this joint moves, right? So if you're going hello there, then that's moving. Every time that we speak, this structure is moving. So this is the temporomandibular joint. The styloid process is this bony landmark that is over here. Okay, remember, bony landmark or structure, they mean basically the same thing, so don't get stressed out about it, okay? The zygomatic process is another landmark or structure, and the zygomatic process would be this structure here, okay? Process pertains to structures that stick out, all right? The mastoid process, that's a structure, one of my favorite structures, which is back here. So here's the external acoustic meatus, and sort of like posterior and inferior to that structure, you'd find the mastoid process. So feel it in your skull right now. You can actually feel that area and feel how pronounced that is. It's kind of cool to know where all of these structures are in our bodies. Now the jugular foramen and carotid canals are very important structures. And I'm going to show them to you in this other skull that I've turned over. So the carotid canal is found here. Now it's easier to see it when you turn the skull this way. You view it from the inferior aspect. So I'm going to stick this structure here, this pipe cleaner. And so that's your carotid canal. The jugular foramen, or one of them, oops, let's see if I can do this with one hand again. So here's our foramen magnum, right, over here. Do it with the green one instead. So here's the foramen magnum, and right here, this hole that you see here, I'm attempting to go through, that would be your left jugular foramen. So we have foramina, it's plural, so I'm going to stick this in here as well so you can see it. So this is your left jugular foramen. Now there are two bones that you can see here on the within the skull. So this right here, this whole area, this whole region, this is our sphenoid bone. It looks like a bat, really. So this whole structure, this whole bone here, sphenoid bone. Now the structure or bony landmark that we see here, okay, I'm going to stick my pinky here so you can see it. That is a structure known as the sella turcica. The sella turcica is a structure where the pituitary gland resides. So it's a little pouch, and sella turcica stands for Turkish saddle. So envision somebody sitting here, okay, and that would be the pituitary gland. The ethmoid bone is embedded within this area here, and the area here is referred to as a plate. This is the cribriform plate, and within the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, we have this structure that sticks out. I'm going to slant this just a little bit so you get a sense of what it looks like and where it is and so forth. So if you see it here, sticks out. You can see the contrast there with my finger, and so that's the crista galli. Crista galli. Also notice that from this view, you can view nicely the foramen magnum. Now let's go over the facial bones. Here we have the mandible bone, and here we have the maxillary bones. This would be the right maxilla, and that would be the left maxilla. Okay, now the maxilla encompasses all of this area here. This would be the left maxilla, this is part of it. This would be the right maxilla. This is also part of that bone. Okay, the zygomatic bones, here we have the left zygomatic bone, and here we have the right zygomatic bone. This is where we put our blush, right? Not all of us put blush on ourselves, but some of us do. Let's see, the lacrimal bones would be within the orbit. So think of tears. So this is the left lacrimal bone, and this would be the right lacrimal bone within this area here. And let's see what else. The nasal bones. Here we have the nasal bones, the right and the left nasal bones. The vomer, which is this right here, and the inferior nasal concha right over here. This is the right inferior nasal concha. This would be the left inferior nasal concha. And in addition, we have the alveolar margins, which are found in this region here, right here, alveolar margins, and alveolar margins over here as well. Okay, now if we turn this skull over, so we look at the inferior aspect upside down here, we notice that we have here, this would be the palatine bone, and this would be the palatine process.